How about shipping costs? How do those fit into this puzzle as well? Does the conflict in the Middle East really add to this cost curve?
Yeah, I mean, shipping costs are typically not a huge component of overall costs, on the order of a few percentage points, for like a shipped light good from Asia into
Mhm.
the United States. Part of the biggest issue on shipping disruptions is that if you think about like demand is, if you think demand is relatively constant, let's say, and you get shipping disruptions, let's just say you get supply that typically takes 8 weeks and now it takes 16 weeks or something like that to come into the market. That actually creates a real problem because people keep demanding it and demanding whatever the goods are, and the
Mhm.
supply is actually delayed. And if we were sort of always delayed, then you'd start to build resiliency around that level of delay. It's just when there's unexpected delays that means that there's then like just functionally like less stuff on the shelves,
Mhm.
which functionally means that people charge more, which creates a squeeze on prices. And then of course you get these bullwhips where you get inventory drawdowns and price increases, and then finally they sort of resolve the supply chain, and then prices, go from going up to going down, and demand starts to, reflect that as well. And so that's one of the confusing things about it is you kind of get these bullwhips when you get this interference. And so the general point of, what the IMF actually did some very good studies on like what the incremental impact is of, let's just say, national Trans-Pacific shipping costs go up by 100% or something like that. The impact on goods prices is like, 0.5% or 1%. That's not the big story. It's not the big story. The big
Prob-
story is the
Sorry,
disruption aspect
probably
of it.
probably because you can, spread that cost out over so many units, right?
Right, right. There's so many units and it's just not, the transport cost is just not that high in the
Mhm.
scheme of things. And that should make um that should be intuitive because like it is kind of wild that we can, that we produce things in Asia and then put them on boats and have them take weeks to come to the port of
Absolutely.
LA, and then on
Distribute them from
trucks
there.
and
Yeah.
trains and then distribute, relative to producing them in our backyards. And so the shipping cost must not be the big thing, right? Because otherwise, if it was a huge input cost, it would cause, we wouldn't be producing nearly as much offshore.
Mhm.
And so it's really about the changes in it. And those changes, they were substantial during COVID. And just the rerouting of the ships, away from the Suez Canal is like disruptive, certainly disruptive at a minimum.
Mhm. I remember seeing recently a video of how long it would take to pay off, one of these massive, massive container ships that's worth, several $100 million, like 300 or 400 million. And you initially you look at the sticker price of the ship and you think, man, it's going to take this company years and years to pay this off. And it's like once you actually work out how many containers and how many units, as we're talking about this particular example, the economics of it actually work out in like two trips. It's unbelievable
That
to think about.
That's wild. That's wild. I think the only sort of core risk of this, which sometimes people don't fully appreciate in the shipping dynamic, is there is an elasticity issue with shipping, which is it takes, let's just say, I don't know, it takes like a year or two to build a ship,
Mhm.
like a huge
Yeah.
container ship. Which means that if we start to get to capacity constraints in container ships, and there are capacity constraints, again, going to that length of time, the length of time is actually a real problem because imagine instead of every good traveling in 4 weeks, it has to travel in 8 weeks.
Mhm.
Well, then, I mean, to oversimplify, you would need twice as many ships on the seas,
Mhm.
right? To deliver the same amount of goods. That's a general, a toy example, but it kind of
Right.
gives you an intuition around it. And so, um, and because the goods that are sitting in the port of Shanghai are worth essentially zero in Shanghai, and they're only worth capital if they're sitting in the port of LA or
Right.
Long Beach, the elasticity of shipping prices are way more volatile than goods prices because If there's a constraint on the supply of ships, then you're out there bidding your ship because you want to get your good on the Trans-Pacific and delivered into the market. And so that's why you see such huge volatility. 100% price increase in shipping costs is not unusual by any stretch.